Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our webinar today on helping teachers afford comprehensive pathways into the profession and achieve loan forgiveness. I'm Jessica Cardashon, Deputy Assistant Secretary for P12 in the Office of Planning, Evaluation, and Policy Development. We're excited to share information on improvements that have been made to the Teach Grant program and limited time opportunities under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. We know that for many aspiring or current teachers, student debt load can play a factor as to whether someone enters and remains in the profession. This administration is committed to supporting high quality, affordable pathways into the profession that are more likely to increase teacher retention and effectiveness and remove barriers to efforts to increase the diversity of the profession. We have a lot to get to today and are going to hear more about these opportunities, how our institutions of higher education are supporting teacher candidates in accessing these programs and the positive impacts that they're having for teachers. We will leave time at the end to try to get to as many questions as we can and ask that you please share your questions via the chat. Also, in the interest of time, full speaker bios and resources with additional information will be shared through the chat. With that, I will now turn it over to Ashley Harrington, Senior Advisor in the Office of Federal Student Aid here at the department.
Thanks so much, Jessica, and thank you everyone for joining. We're going to jump right in. I'm going to share a lot of information today about the wonderful resources and targeted student loan relief that the Biden-Harris administration has prioritized. So we can go into the next slide. So just flagging for everyone here that even before last Wednesday's announcement that I'll get to next, we had already approved more than $32 billion in debt cancellation for 1.6 million borrowers. And that's through a number of changes, including through significant changes, temporary changes to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program that we're going to talk about. That has resulted in the forgiveness of $10 billion, over $10 billion for 175,000 public servants, including many teachers, through the limited PSLF waiver. Next slide. And again, that is prior to last week when we announced one-time debt relief that is going to significantly change the lives of 43 million Americans and has the ability to cancel the debt completely for 20 million Americans who have been struggling with student debt for years. And so this relief, just to flag, more details will be released in the coming days, but it's available for borrowers who make up to $125,000, and it's up to $20,000 in forgiveness for borrowers who received a Pell Grant in college, and up to $10,000 for those who have not received a Pell Grant. We also have extended the payment pause that has been going on since March of 2020 to the end of this year to give borrowers more time to prepare for repayments to restart and continue to get their lives and finances back on track as we come out of this pandemic and recession. We also announced a proposal for a new income-based repayment plan that will significantly make long-term changes to and make student loan repayment more manageable and less burdensome for millions of borrowers who will continue in repayment going forward. So we're really excited about this plan and what it means for sustainable change for all the borrowers who have been burdened with student debt for so long. Next slide. But one of the big pieces we want to talk about today is the limited PSLF waiver. We announced this last October last year. Next slide. And it has truly been a game changer for so many borrowers. I mentioned the $10 billion of forgiveness that has already happened for 175,000 borrowers, but that is nothing compared to the million plus borrowers who have gotten closer to forgiveness, with the average borrower picking up a year's worth of additional credit towards forgiveness, that 120 months of repayment required for forgiveness under PSLF. So this is huge, and so many folks here today can benefit from this, and we want to make sure borrowers know about it and know how to access this relief. Next slide. So we announced this waiver last October, as I mentioned, and basically under the waiver, borrowers can get credit for past periods of repayment that normally don't qualify for PSLF. So under the waiver, we're not looking at your loan program. We're not looking at your repayment plan. We don't care whether you want IDR or standard or extended. We're not looking at that. We're not looking at whether you made a payment, in full, or whether you made it on time. We just want to know if you were in active repayment status, and we define that very generously, even counting some periods of deferment and forbearance. And you know what's really important for many borrowers here today is that under the waiver, even if you receive teacher loan forgiveness already, you can count that period of service towards eligibility for PSLF under the waiver. But this is a time limited waiver. These changes will expire on October 31st of this year. So we are asking all borrowers to make sure they take the steps they need to take advantage of this waiver. And that means getting direct loans if they don't have them already. So if they still have FFEL or Perkins loans, they need to consolidate into the direct loan program, and submitting a PSLF form by October 31st of this year. You don't want to miss out on these changes. Next slide. So just to break it down a little bit more about how the waiver works, we're counting payments prior to consolidation. Many of you may be aware that prior to this waiver, people consolidated, whether it was FFEL loans or Perkins loans or even direct loans, and they started at zero. Under the waiver, that's not the case. You can get credit for time spent prior to consolidation. You can consolidate now before the waiver ends and still get credit for the months prior to that towards your 120. It's a very big deal. We're not looking at your loan program. We're not looking at whether you had direct loans or FFEL or Perkins. We're not looking at your repayment plan, as I mentioned. We're not looking at your loan type, though it's slightly different for Parent Plus. You still had to have been employed full-time with a qualifying employer. And I'm not going too in-depth in the PSLF requirements because I'm hoping folks are aware, but we'll also share resources at the end. But the biggest takeaway we hope that you have is that this is a game changer. If you've heard bad things about PSLF before, you tried before and were denied, try again now and try by 1031 and check out our waiver page to see if you can qualify. Next slide. So we're even counting deferments and forbearances because we also announced an IDR account adjustment in April that we're working to implement in the coming months, where you can get credit for long-term forbearances, for deferments, except in-school deferments prior to 2013, for economic hardship deferments, some military-related forbearances and deferments. And for those, we're giving automatic credit as long as you also certify your employment for PSLF. You can even get credit for some short-term forbearances by submitting a complaint. So this is very exciting as well. And when this is implemented, it's going to put even more borrowers at forgiveness or closer to forgiveness later this year. Next slide. So for folks who are wondering, is PSLF for me, whether it's your school, the good news is most folks working here today are already with at least one PSLF eligible employer because you're at a higher education or K-12 institution, right? But if you want to look at other employers, we have a standalone employer tool, or if you are an employer and you want to make sure you're showing up in the FSA database to make it easier for your employees to access PSLF, we now have a public-facing tool. You don't have to sign into a studentaid.gov account to use it. That's very exciting. Please use that tool, and you can reach out to us and let us know if you're not showing up in that database, and you should be. Next slide. But for folks who are trying to apply and are trying to make sure they take advantage of this waiver by the deadline, we want you to go to studentaid.gov/PSLF. That's where you get to the help tool. That's where you go to create your PSLF form and generate that form so that you can submit it for PSLF, and you want to do it before this waiver is over. So you want to go to studentaid.gov/PSLF and log into your studentaid.gov account and generate your PSLF form. Next slide. So just to recap, for borrowers take advantage of the waiver, they want to confirm their employers qualify. They can do that through the standalone tool or through our help tool when they log in. They want to consolidate any non-direct loans they have. They want to get at least one PSLF form in for qualifying employment, and they want to do it all by October 31st, 2022. This is for borrowers, even if they haven't been in repayment 10 years, even if they've only been in repayment for a year, 2 years, 5 years, even if they're not at 120. You don't want to miss out on this waiver. Get your form in. We like to say, when in doubt, fill it out. This is a game changer, and we have more resources available. We're actually going to have a webinar tomorrow to actually walk people through how to generate and submit a PSLF help form. So we'll drop that in the chat, but we want to make it so that you know what you have to do and you have the resources available to use or to share with borrowers that you know in your network. Next slide. So this is just a couple of information and resource links. The best place for more information about the PSLF waiver is studentaid.gov/PSLF waiver. We have a ton of information and FAQs there, way more than I can talk about in 10 minutes. So check it out. It's more detailed information. For the help tool, which is where you want to go to certify your employment, it's studentaid.gov/PSLF. For general PSLF information, you want to go to studentaid.gov/public service. And to submit a PSLF form, you want to do it to our PSLF servicer, which as of July 1 is MOHELA. And that information is right there. Next slide. So now I want to talk briefly about the Teach Grant program, because we also made some awesome improvements to that that really build upon all the work we're trying to do to support teachers and make sure we're making all of our process less burdensome across the board for student loan borrowers, and particularly making sure that our teachers have the support and relief that they need. Next slide. So in 2021, we implemented changes to the Teach Grant program, and it's really meant to simplify the process and make it easier and less burdensome for borrowers so they can focus on what they really want to be doing, which is teaching and serving America's students, right? So under these new changes, Teach Grant recipients don't have to certify that they began teaching or that they intend to begin teaching within 120 days of graduating or withdrawing from school. These are burdensome paperwork requirements that unnecessarily kicked people out of the Teach Grant program and led to their grants being converted into loans unnecessarily. We also removed the requirement that you had to certify your intent to serve every year by October 1. Now you only have to certify four times within the 8-year period, right? So we made that a lot easier as well and made it so that you won't get kicked out if you just missed a year. Next slide. So the final regulations expanded the fields that folks can work in for their service obligation. As I said, we simplified the certification requirements. We've put more information and resources into our interest and exit counseling. We've also created a conversion counseling to help borrowers know what's happening if their grant is converted to loans and what they can do about it. And we've provided processes to correct improper conversions. And that has resulted in more than 70% of our received requests for reconsideration being approved and borrowers getting their grants that have been converted to loans back into grants since this has been implemented. Next slide. And so there was also legislation as we worked with our partners in Congress last year to further build on these things that we were implementing, including, further improving our reconsideration process for folks who were converted into loans, making sure that we're doing it in a timely fashion. That was always our goal, and we continue to do that. And as I said, we have a 70% approval rate for those requests. Next slide. So when your grant conversion is approved, you get your Teach Grant reinstated. We discharge any accumulated interest and fees. We apply any payments made to any other direct loans the borrower have, or we'll give a refund. We remove the negative credit reporting that you might have received when it was converted, especially if many borrowers didn't even know their grant was converted, right? And so that's part of the issue, is there was so much confusion around the process, people not understanding so many, burdensome paperwork requirements that really were unnecessary and really stopped our teachers from being able to focus on what they needed to focus on. And we extended the time remaining for the recipient to complete the service obligation once their reconsideration request was approved. Next slide. And so just so you know, this act also amended the CARE Act to really make sure that teachers were able to get a 3-year extension of their obligation window if their service began or included time in the COVID-19 national emergency. We know this is hurting our teachers across the country, just like it's hurting so much of American society. And so we want to make sure teachers have this cushion as they try to navigate this. Next slide. Additional flexibilities and updates, just want to make sure we talked about the new improved resources in counseling. We talked about the reconsideration process that's now open to all teachers, no matter when your loan was converted. And just flagging for borrowers to make sure you know that as of later this month, well, tomorrow is September, so in mid-September, the Teach Grant program is going to transfer to a new servicer, MOHELA, because Fed loan servicing is leaving the federal student loan servicing system. The same thing happened with the public service loan forgiveness program. If you're a PSLF borrower, you may be aware of this, or you noticed earlier that I mentioned submitting PSLF forms to MOHELA. That's also going to happen for the Teach Grant program. It's nothing to worry about. Transfers are a completely normal part of the process. It doesn't impact your terms, conditions, or anything like that, but you will have a different servicer and you will get notifications from us, from Fed Loan, from MOHELA, as that process goes on. Next slide. And just a couple of information pages and resources for more Teach Grant info. The best place for Teach Grant info is studentaid.gov/teach. For the reconsideration process, go right to studentaid.gov/teach-reconsideration. For more about the different counseling programs that we've implemented to make sure borrowers have more information about how this all works, and grantees about how this all works, studentaid.gov/teach-grant-program. And if you need help, we've got a couple of numbers here for our FSA Information Center, Fed Loan Servicing for when you're still with Fed Loan, and for MOHELA for when that transfer happens later this year. Next slide. I think that's it for me, and we're happy to take questions later, but I will turn it back over. Thank you all so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashley. You have been busy, and your team. Really appreciate all that you're doing on behalf of these programs, and really hopefully will make things much easier for teachers to access these programs. So I'll turn it now over to Mike Rose, Senior Director for Government Relations with the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, to hear more about the work that his organization is doing to support educators in accessing these benefits.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. I'm assuming everyone on the call knows about these two programs, but just want to remind everyone that Teach Grants were created to increase the number of teachers in high need content areas like STEM, special education, and other areas in disadvantaged school districts. And then the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program was created to attract qualified individuals to careers in the public sector. We at AACTE strongly support both programs. We hear often that affordability is one of the biggest impediments for becoming an educator and or remaining in the profession. And so these two programs really do a great job of helping to alleviate these challenges. Unfortunately, we want to make sure that everyone that is eligible for these programs is benefiting from them. And so we are working with the department to help publicize them, as well as the changes that Ashley had talked about, which I'm also going to mention a few others as well. But just wanted to highlight, these are great programs that really help individuals realize their dream of becoming educators. So the department recently made improvements to Teach Grants, as Ashley had mentioned, so including improvement exit counseling, and also requiring that servicers send better and more detailed information to recipients, expanding the number of reasons why Teach Grant recipients service obligations can be suspended, and a Teach Grant recipient may teach for less than a full academic year but still receive credit. And then also to make sure that we can simplify the requirements to allow Teach Grant recipients to group together undergrad and graduate service obligations whenever that's possible. The other aspect I wanted to touch on was the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. These are, again, another important program that benefits not just teachers, but all those that are in the public service area. And want to make sure that people that are in the nonprofit world, working for the military, working for state, federal, local school district, governments, again, and nonprofits are receiving the credit that they deserve, and allows them to to consolidate various loans into direct consolidated loans so that they can become eligible for public service loan forgiveness, which, as Ashley mentioned, needs to be done by October 31st of this year. These, again, are very important programs. Our members are realizing how beneficial these programs are and are using them to help recruit interested individuals into the education field. One of the areas that we're noticing an uptick is in the special ed community. And we're hoping that in conjunction with the Department of Education, that we can see educators enter into all the high need fields that these programs are designed to help out. So we appreciate their work and look forward to working with them even more over the coming years. And with that, I will hand it back over to Jessica.
Great. Thanks, Mike, and really appreciate partnership with AACT and all that you're doing to get the word out to teacher prep programs across the country so that students can learn, early on before they enter the profession about these opportunities that are available. And I'm going to turn it over to one such institution that's done a wonderful job in terms of counseling their students around these programs. So pleased to introduce Tim Bakula, Director of Financial Aid, and Kaylee Benham, Counselor and Advisor in the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships at the University of Northern Iowa, to hear more about their work.
Excellent. Thank you, Jessica. So I'll start by introducing the University of Northern Iowa as an institution and then discuss our successes with the Teach Grant program and how we steward the program to achieve those successes. So the University of Northern Iowa, referred to as UNI in our state, is a mid-sized regional comprehensive university. Smaller than the other two state institutions, we specifically attract students with teaching goals within the state and from around the country. In fact, UNI graduates more students with an undergraduate education degree than 99% of institutions within the U.S. Many of our graduates actually stay in our state and currently are teaching in 99% of the Iowa school districts. The 2021 academic year Teach report on FSA shows UNI as being 8th in the nation for both the dollar amount and the number of students that we awarded the grant to. So let's talk about what we view as our successes with the program. According to the last Teach Grant study released by the Department of Ed, the national pickup rate for the grant was between 2 and 19%. UNI on average sees an acceptance rate of around 50% or higher. Another success for us is our low conversion rates. If the teaching obligation accompanying the grant is not fulfilled, students see that grant convert to an unsubsidized loan. Before the programmatic changes that took effect in 2021, many conversions were the result of missing deadlines for paperwork. Hopefully in the upcoming years, we will see conversion rates decrease due to these changes. But prior to these changes, however, the national average conversion rate was around 63%. UNI saw an average conversion rate of only 34%, which is almost half the national rate. So how does the University of Northern Iowa steward the program to achieve these successes? Outreach and collaboration contribute to our high pickup rates. So we do the expected things of having a website, advertising around campus with posters and flyers, and promoting it during our orientation seasons, but we go a step further by offering information sessions during the orientation season to the students and their families that are interested in teaching. We held weekly Zoom information sessions throughout the past summer's orientations, usually at varying times of day, so that interested parties could find a time that worked for them. We also collaborate with other offices on campus, specifically the College of Education. So different universities will manage the Teach Grant program differently. So some education colleges oversee the program, and at others, the financial aid office will. No matter who oversees the program, though, it is essential that both parties work closely together. So over the past couple of years, when a new advisor is hired in the College of Education, I have done a training session with them where I review the program, its policies, and our procedures. This assists them in their discussions with students interested in or pursuing a degree in education. As a financial aid office running the program, we don't always understand the structures and organization of programming within the colleges. Therefore, it's extremely important that we work with those in charge of the college to ensure that the new programs and initiatives that should qualify for the grant are set up to allow those students to be eligible to receive it. Another likely reason for our high acceptance rate is the result of our office packaging the Teach Grant on eligible students' financial aid offers, meaning that they have a qualifying ACT or SAT or GPA and have a declared major or minor that would allow them to teach in a high need field. This greatly increases the awareness of the grant as an option to help pay for their educational costs. I believe the Department of Ed study on the grant found that 44% of grant recipients said the funding was somewhat or very influential in their decision to pursue teaching. In regards to the deciding to teach in a high need field or at a high need school, 58% were enticed to do so because of the Teach Grant. Now, students packaged with the grant need to accept it if they wish to receive it. While we know that packaging the grant can be controversial, there are both federal and institutional requirements in place that assure no student is just taking the grant without understanding what they're agreeing to. I'm going to outline what our institutional requirements are with our other success point, low conversion rates. So as mentioned earlier, our conversion rate is almost half the national average. We attribute this to our College of Education doing a great job of educating students and giving them the experiences and tools they need throughout their educational careers to have longevity and success in their professional careers. Our greatest strategy in lowering conversion is our personal counseling, which is done in person or via Zoom, that all first-time Teach Grant recipients are required to complete with our office. These counseling sessions are the same as the Teach informational sessions that we also offer during orientation season, so attending those actually will count as completing this requirement. Then we offer group sessions 3 to 4 times a week, the month in which each term starts, again at varying times. Unfortunately, late evening sessions and Sunday sessions are the most popular, so sometimes out of office hour work is required. After census date, students interested in the grant can schedule an hour one-on-one appointment with our office to go over what those requirements are for the program. So students also have a federal requirement of online initial/subsequent counseling and the agreement to serve or repay. So why do we want students to meet with our office for an hour to go over it too? Well, we know that some students doing online requirements are just clicking through them to get them done. We also cannot gauge how well they comprehend what they are learning, nor do they have the opportunity to ask clarifying questions about what they're learning on the grant. So these sessions allow them that opportunity. So at the end of each session, I actually ask students that have done the online counseling in advance if they believe they have a better understanding of what's expected of them, and they almost always agree that the in-person counseling assisted with that. We can also personalize the materials and examples given to students during these sessions. An example would be that a student with elementary education as a major and math as a minor could qualify for the grant. While elementary ed is K through 8, if I ask that student what grade level they want to teach and they tell me 3rd grade, I'm going to tell them to really consider if they need the grant, because it will be very hard for them to complete the service requirement, as they're unlikely to spend more than half their time teaching math to 3rd graders. During these sessions, I also want to ensure that students understand temporary suspension so they can so that they can make the most of their time after graduation and be successful in completing that obligation. Using different scenarios and my fingers, as some students are visual learners, I can map out timelines where temporary suspension could be approved or not. Overall, we see that the grant is an opportunity for those set on teaching and an opportunity to draw students into the field or stick with it through their first years as professionals. Teach also has the opportunity to diversify the field, attracting more low-income and first-generation students. UNI sees that 26% of our students taking the grant are Pell eligible, and if we look at those with an EFC of 12,000 or less, it actually increases to being 44% of them accepting the grant. So hopefully this information will spark some ideas and ways to work with students and others across your campus to make the most of what Teach Grant program has to offer for future educators, the high need field, low income schools, and the profession as a whole. Obviously, you have some information from regarding how to contact us. So if you would like to touch base on some of how we steward the program, feel free. But otherwise, I will turn it back over to Jessica. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kaylee. It's so important that those who are planning on entering the profession or thinking about it are fully aware of the many benefits that are available through the Teach Grant program, which provides that upfront financial relief and public service loan forgiveness, and really appreciate the thoughtful counseling with which you do this. And now we're going to hear from AFT and NEA, who are doing a lot of work as well for their current members to elevate these opportunities. So I'm going to now turn it over to Ronnie Lau, federal lobbyist with the NEA, the National Education Association, and Sarah Tamilio with the American Federation of Teachers, to hear about how they're supporting their members. And again, a reminder, we know that we're sharing a lot of information. We will send a follow-up email with links to these resources and a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation. So Ronnie, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. We can go into the next slide. So I wanted to first off share overall our thoughts around these amazing changes to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. The National Education Association and our union members of educators have been incredibly engaged on this issue for quite some time now, noticing the problems that this program has had for a number of years in its implementation. And of course, this administration has been so helpful in this collaboration and cooperation just to make these changes. And so here I am today to really share about the numerous resources that the National Education Association has provided to our members to help them navigate the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Waiver and the complicated process that it still has with it. But overall, report over the success stories about how real this is and how this is impacting so many positive lives out there that are educators like your colleagues out there. And so some of these stories may be familiar to you, but familiar to your own specific situation. So hopefully what I'm reading to you for the upcoming for all of these may sound familiar. So we'll start off with Nikoji Smith and Erica Carpenter. They're both NEA members from Michigan, part of the Michigan Education Association, both work in a elementary school in that state. And, you know, maybe similar to you guys, they both have feared to call upon their student loan services for quite some time. Both carried a substantial amount of student debt. They heard they might eventually qualify for forgiveness through public service loan forgiveness, but avoidance just seems easier. The large amount of debt that a lot of our educators hold is incredibly stressful and I'm sure daunting to a lot of you. They didn't know where to proceed or apply. They've heard the horror stories of some folks that got denied. But either way, both of them enrolled in public service loan forgiveness a little over 2 years ago. And once they enrolled before the waiver was implemented, they were on track to receive their loans forgiven by 2028. However, though, a shock of their lives happened, and in January 2022, they both got a notice that both of their debts have been forgiven. For Nikoji Smith, she amounted to $260,000 in student debt forgiveness from PSLF. And for Erica Carpenter, that was $249,000 in student debt forgiveness. And now they're free of this debt and able to pursue many different things in their financial goals and, of course, continue their lives and passion into teaching, which is really amazing. Next slide. And here's some other success stories. We'll start off with Emily Robinson. Emily Robinson was an educator from Georgia who teaches in high school. She got her debt forgiven for $21,000 through the PSLF waiver. And she actually got a chance to speak to the Senate Banking Committee about her own story and how she navigated through the PSLF waiver and benefit from it. And one of the quotes that she shared with us is that it's like a validation and that she feels important and she's able to do what she wants and wants or folks that want her to stick around to stay within the education profession. PSLF is finally working in a way for educators to benefit educators and obviously recruit and make educators get retained and stick into the profession, which is so crucial. Another member is Chris Perkle. He is a Maine middle school teacher. He had $80,000 in debt forgiveness. And so for him, his story may be something similar to what some of the folks here might have experienced. Usually paying your bills ahead of time is kind of a good thing, right? So he actually ended up having problems with that because of it. Before the limited waiver, he was paying ahead and made 31 loan payments in advance of their due dates. Unfortunately, with how PSLF was previously calculated, none of those payments ended up counting towards the 120 payments that are necessary to acquire forgiveness. But because of the Biden limited waiver, we were able to count those payments and Chris was able to get his student debt forgiveness on time as he deserved. There's also Rob Glover, who is a University of Maine professor. He received $150,000 in student debt forgiveness. And so he had done all the right things for PSLF since the get-go. He started teaching in 2011. So he should have gotten forgiveness probably about a year ago before the waiver. But despite this, he consolidated his loans, was on an income-driven repayment plan, and made all the great initial steps. Despite that, his servicer had initially somehow lost some of the payment credits. So there was about over a year of payments that were lost. But thanks to the limited waiver, they were able to locate and track those payments. And he was able to get debt forgiveness on time. And then finally, there's also Shirley Cavazos. She has debt forgiveness for $47,000. She's a California middle school teacher. For years, she also relied on a lot of bad advice that was being provided by some of the servicers that she was assigned to, who assured that she was on track for PSLF. But once 10 years rolled around, she found out that she was not, and she was not eligible yet for PSLF for many different reasons. But again, because of this limited waiver, a lot of Shirley's earlier payments counted because of the PSLF waiver. She had consolidated her loans, which reset her payment count, but the limited waiver, as actually iterated earlier, counts those previous consolidated payments made before consolidation, which is so crucial that led to her forgiveness. So as I mentioned, NEA has also been engaged in a lot of communication strategies in terms of how to advise our members to navigate through this process and have many resources at their disposal so they know exactly what they're doing to go get this debt forgiveness. 2 pages I wanted to point out. There's nea.org/student debt support, which is our main page that leads to many of the different things that we have around the PSLF waiver, the most recent Biden cancellation announcement. It's a great place for resources, just a centralized place for folks to visit. And then we also have our Student Debt Navigator tool by Savvy. I'll speak into that a little bit later, but that link is neamb.com/Savvy. We also host monthly webinars around the public service loan forgiveness waiver. There's some topics there that folks can see right there. All these recordings are available on our YouTube page. So even though you may have missed these, you can always visit NEA's YouTube page and find the recordings to those webinars where we walk specific clinics through our NEA members and other educators about those different topics on PSLF. And then, of course, we have a lot of editorial topics around this issue as well. Next slide. NEA has also obviously been engaged in digital amplification. Make no mistake, the first thing is that, as I mentioned, educators help make this change happen. And a lot of that credit also goes to this administration, Secretary Cardona, Department of Education, for listening to our educators and our NEA members to make this change. So a lot of this is congratulatory, obviously, to make sense and feel our members that are empowered to help us make this change. And then second, of course, trying to spread this news. We recognize that there is millions of educators out there, millions of public servants that have not attained loan forgiveness, that face the burden of student debt. And it is our job right now to help as many folks through this process as possible to take advantage of the PSLF limited waiver. And we do that through social amplification on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, even TikTok, you name it. These are just a couple examples of things that the NEA has been doing right now on social media to help elevate this and share these success stories. And as I mentioned earlier, we have partnered with an organization called Savvy. They have helped us develop a really unique tool called our Student Debt Navigator. So if you are a National Education Association union member, you can have access to this free tool that's at your disposal. It's part of your member benefits as part of our union. This is a tool that helps you apply for public service loan forgiveness, but also helps you pursue different things that may be helpful to you in your student debt planning. But overall, it provides personalized repayment and forgiveness options and outlays all those different things for you, like the PSLF limited waiver or the upcoming Biden cancellation announcement. It helps you monitor for new programs and policy changes, like the things that we're talking about today. Yearly recertification and repayment and forgiveness plans, helping you recertify your employment for public service loan forgiveness so you receive it on track in 10 years and after 120 payments. Help you sign and submit paperwork on PSLF. And of course, receive personalized support because we recognize that every single member and educator has a different situation with their student debt. And having somebody at your disposal to help answer your questions, to have that personalized support is really crucial. And again, you can go to that by neamb.org/savvy. Next slide. And then the final thing I just want to talk about is we have done a marketing campaign around the public service loan forgiveness waiver. Unfortunately, I know we're experiencing some technical difficulties, so we're unable to pull the videos up from YouTube and Vimeo to show you what we've been doing. But overall, we've embarked in a really major campaign that we estimate to hopefully reach around 600,000 educators across the nation who hold student debt. And essentially, this is just part of our outreach to making sure that we can reach as many folks as possible to take advantage of the waiver before it expires on October 31st. And we've done many different ways about forwarding folks to the resource that we have. We're also introducing the different things that we've done with the Department of Ed, such as these success stories we've highlighted, roundtables with the Secretary of Education, testimonials that show that this process is actually working. We want to get that word out as much as possible to our hundreds of thousands of educators out there with student debt. With that, I'll turn that over to my colleague, Sarah at AFT.
Great. Thank you so much, Ronnie. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be on this webinar with all of you. And, on behalf of the 1.7 million members of the AFT, I want to thank Jessica, Ashley, and everyone at the Education Department who is working tirelessly to keep the promise of PSLF and alleviate the burden of student debt. Your work is truly, truly changing lives, as you saw in Ronnie's presentation. And we're hearing about it every week. It's just fantastic. Teachers and staff across the country, are benefiting from this, but also the communities they serve and the students that they teach. And it helps teachers to stay in the profession, and it helps districts to actually recruit teachers. We know there is a major teacher shortage But this is something educating folks on PSLF will actually recruit and retain new teachers. The other presenters all touched on, the technical aspects of PSLF. So I just want to talk a little bit more, add a couple things about member engagement and what we're doing on collective bargaining. And then I also have some success stories. So you can see we've done member surveys that helps inform our work, that helps us engage with members. We do direct member outreach through a text system. We've texted tens of thousands of people about their student debt. We've put out announcements from the department through our text chain, and it's a great way to actually contact our educators and get through to them because they are in the classroom all day. They can't take our calls, and they often don't check email as much as we do here in Washington, D.C. We have local student debt programs, local student debt clinics. We actually have one here at AFT today. We are hosting a student debt clinic in honor of PSLF, the Day of Action for the White House, and Deputy Secretary Cindy Martin and Randy will be there. You are all welcome to come. It's at 4:30 this afternoon at the AFT headquarters. And we host national student debt webinars, which we do every week. Those are online. We tweet them out. They're on aft.org. Very easy to sign up for our webinars, and everybody is welcome. Similar to the information that Ronnie shared, we don't limit it just to members. We have it out there, and we invite everybody because we want to make sure everyone is able to access PSLF. And so at the collective bargaining table, we have actually had some really amazing labor management partnerships develop where the employer and the employees both benefit. So we have, sample contract language for release time so that our teachers can actually attend clinics and get the information about PSLF to apply. We have a toolkit for employers on how to set up 127 plans, which I'm happy to share that as well. And, it's become a really, really positive way for our teachers and the school districts to work together and collectively bargain for a common good. Next slide, please. I'm going to start off with these are some success stories. So Betty Ford actually attended a student debt clinic taught by another professor out in LA. So what we are doing is we are training our members, some who have received PSLF, some are halfway through the process, to actually host their own student debt clinics. And that's helping us build capacity. And this person, Betty Ford, one of our members, an adjunct professor, actually had her debt forgiven because she went to a clinic and applied through the waiver. If it were not for the waiver, she would not have received PSLF. She had over $400,000, which is absolutely incredible and life-changing forgiven. Next slide, please. And this is Yvonne. So the reason I put Yvonne in this mix of success stories is that what we are trying to do for our membership, it is not just teachers in K-12, it's school staff as well. We are trying to ensure that everybody knows about PSLF, right? All of our members, and that the job classifications go beyond just a typical K-12 teacher, that all public employees should be eligible. And, you can see here in Yvonne's story that she wasn't able to retire. She had been thinking about retiring and actually made the decision to stay in her profession. And now she can retire with dignity. She can plan for retirement after a very long career with the state of Maryland, thanks to having $40,000 forgiven under the PSLF waiver. And that's one point I want to make is that we are trying to target not just teachers who are new to the profession or have 10 years in the profession. We are trying to target our teachers who have 30, 40 years in the profession who still have student debt. Next slide, please. Sarah from Minnesota, she told us about the financial freedom she and her family now have. They were able to buy a new home and expand childcare for their kids and do a lot of things that they couldn't do because she had $130,000 worth of student debt hanging over her. Like Yvonne, she said she's now able to plan for retirement so that she will have a long profession, teaching, and a dignified retirement. Next slide, please. James is actually one of our nurse educators. So he's from Ohio, from the Ohio Nurses Association, worked throughout the pandemic and carried the burden of student debt. He thought that it would not be forgiven, because of technical issues that are alleviated through the waiver, but he had 62,000 forgiven. And not just that, he had a return payments of $6,000. So we are trying to make sure that our members know that some of them may be entitled to return payments. And the next slide, please. CJ is one of our PSRP leaders. We call them PSRPs or paraprofessionals. And these folks typically make less in wages. They typically have 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet. And they may not have, these exorbitant amounts of student debt, but somebody like CJ having $12,000 forgiven is life-changing. We want to make sure that all teachers and all staff know they're eligible for PSLF. Next slide, please. Similar to what Ronnie mentioned, we're doing a lot of the same things that NEA is doing on social media. That's how we are able to contact our teachers and get across to our members. We're doing state legislative work, trying to make sure that states are passing laws to protect student borrower consumers, to expand access to PSLF, to make it a little bit easier. Unfortunately, we a couple years ago had to actually take legal action. We are doing everything that we possibly can to support members, and we are taking action that they couldn't do alone without our resources. Next slide, please. Similar to NEA, we have a tool, the company is called Summer, and it's a free member benefit. Our members, our teachers can all sign up for this free of charge, and they can enter all of their information about student debt and get help throughout the process, whether it's applying for the waiver or getting their employment certification up to date. Summer will help them. And that's it for me. I just want to thank the Biden-Harris administration, the leadership of Secretary Cardona, and again, all of the hard work of the department and FSA staff. Our members are getting their loan forgiveness they were promised, and it's truly changing lives. So thank you again.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for helping to spread the word. I know it is important that all your members, teachers, other school staff are aware of these limited time benefits. Obviously, public service loan forgiveness does extend beyond and Teach Grant, but cannot repeat enough the October 31st deadline that Ashley spoke to. Also want to take a moment to also thank our interpreters as well. Thank you very much for doing that. Thank you all for the work that you're doing just to help us get to this point where these opportunities are available and these changes were made. We know that this was a very long time in the making. Thank you to University of Northern Iowa just for what you're doing, on the ground, kind of making sure that our future teachers know that there are resources available to support them. And Ashley, thank you so much for taking time out. It has been a particularly busy few weeks for your team and really appreciate it. And again, to our ASL interpreters, thank you for participating. And Mike as well, thank you very much. And we will follow up over email with the resources that we highlighted, the PowerPoints, and keep your questions coming over email as well. Thank you all so much and have a great afternoon.